TSN.
This is OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog on TSN 1050.
Welcome into OverDrive. It is Monday afternoon. I'm Aaron Karolnik. That is Dave Feschuk, the self-proclaimed A-team here on the program. And, of course, we're live on TSN television, radio, and YouTube. Feschuk, you know how it goes. When Brian, Jamie, and Jeff are off, OverDrive Reddit starts to freak out. People poke their head around and say, the A-team's here. And it kind of reminds me of, I've worked in radio my entire professional career, face for radio jokes.
Yes.
You know, you get sick of them after a while, but in this particular instance, it is definitely appropriate. Great to see you nonetheless.
It is great to see you. Yes, ratings will tank.
No.
OverDrive Reddit will freak out. We can handle it. We've read all the mean things that have been written about us. We've read them all. It hasn't killed us yet.
No, that's it. You got to have thick skin in this business. And, you know, my skin is not particularly thick, but yours is. You're a seasoned vet. I'm working my way to that status one day. But nonetheless, we got a ton of things to get into today, most notably the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I was thinking about this as we're sitting in the green room, just how many things, how many repercussions there are and have been and will be from that Austin Matthews injury on Thursday night against the Anaheim Ducks. I was in the building. It was something to behold. We know the story, the lack of response from the team. They do go out and win in the third period. Then, of course, Saturday rolls around. They're playing with this renewed energy, this renewed vigor. Get a point from the Buffalo Sabres. They go out second half of back-to-back against Minnesota. They beat the Wild. And all of a sudden, the tank is over. This team is playing with an energy we hadn't seen since they came back from the Olympic break. And what do you attribute it to? It's just a sense of embarrassment from the club as a whole after how they responded or didn't respond to Matthews and what happened with Radko Gudas? There's no other explanation for me.
Well, we've seen it with this team before, AK, when everybody in the world writes them off and is done with them, they turn it on. And they say, oh, yeah? You think we're gutless? Oh, yeah? You think it's a lost season? Watch this. You think we're tanking? We're not tanking. We are, as I couldn't believe Anthony Stolar said, we are establishing a culture. Now,
great. 10 years in.
10 years into the Matthews era, 60-something games into this season, we are establishing a culture.
And you heard Morgan Riley say, we're not folding up the tent quite yet. I'm not sure exactly what that means.
It means the tent collapsed and is in tatters on the ground. They can't fold it.
Well, that may be it. And the Leafs will have 14 games left. If they win every one of them, they will finish with 98 points and make the postseason. Clearly, that's not happening. But what I do think is happening is that they are ruining any and all chances of keeping their own first-round pick this year. And again, the players don't care about that at all.
No.
Zero interest. Does Brad Treliving care? Maybe not, because he might not be the guy in charge. Probably the only person who you could say with certainty might care is Keith Pelly, but what is he supposed to do? They're playing without their captain and best player. Their record without him over his career as a Maple Leaf is outstanding.
Yes.
And that's another conversation that I think needs to be had. Why do the Maple Leafs play so well without Austin Matthews? Historically speaking, Morgan Riley and Nylander and Marner, Tavares, all those guys, seemingly when one or multiple of them are absent, the team plays exceptionally well. And 5 of 6 points against Anaheim, Buffalo, and Minnesota, it makes you wonder, why is this happening again? Their best players out, and this team is thriving. Small sample size this year, yes, but you wonder how much longer it will continue with the New York Islanders coming to town tomorrow night.
Without a doubt. I mean, it's fascinating to me on a lot of levels. And if you're Keith Pelly, you've got a lot of things to get to the bottom of, right? You've got to figure out what the hell went on with this team this season, right? Because there was every reason to believe, they were a really good team. They took Florida to 7 games a season ago, won the Atlantic Division, won a division for the first time in a long time. They looked like they knew what they were doing a season ago, and it absolutely cratered this year. And then you see the low point, the sort of encapsulation of it all is the captain writhing on the ground in pain after a very greasy hit from Radko Gudas and no response. And you have to ask yourself the question, is that because the guys around Matthews are gutless, or is that a comment on the way they see their captain? Could be a bit of both.
Sure.
Could be a bit of both.
Not sure. Does it matter who's on the ground writhing in pain if the reaction will be any different, considering some of the guys on the ice? Again, I think it says a lot about them. The 4 guys on the ice, Riley, Nylander, Easton Cowan, who's not doing anything, he's a kid, and Brandon Carlo, who now has a history of doing just that being nothing in the face of adversity. We saw it with Anthony Stolarz earlier this season. Carlo didn't do anything, and now certainly we've seen what happened here.
Jake McCabe was standing there too when Mason Marchment jammed into Anthony
you're
Stolarz.
right.
It's not
Again,
just hanging on Carlo.
And
it's a team-wide epidemic.
And you have to wonder, again, talking about the repercussions of this Matthews injury, how, if at all, this changes the perception of management for what this team is, the culture that it has instilled in it. And again, we've seen this for a decade now. No one should be surprised at the way they responded or didn't respond. But at the same time, this was by far the most egregious example because of the predicament that they find themselves in with regards to their standing. Season's over. None of this matters. In the past, it was a playoff game. Remember Marchand and Liljegren, the high ankle injury that he suffered, and no one really did anything. And again, early part of the season with Stolarz, there's a litany of examples of just that. But the fact that it was a lost season and still no one really came to the defense of their captain and best player is astounding. And it's the most damning example. And you have to wonder, does that affect the way they proceed here, the final 14 games into the offseason? Do you let that one singular incident, on top of many other incidents, affect the way you build your roster, your organization, your culture going forward? Or do you have to look at it as an anomaly?
That's what you have to figure out.
And that's a tough question to answer.
And look, I mean, the problem with sort of sloughing it off as an anomaly and saying, well, that was just one incident, extenuating, list of circumstances. Yeah. Radko Gudas, nobody wants to mess with that guy, even though we all know Radko Gudas was lying on the ice after the hit. All you had to do was jump on top of him,
just
punch him a couple of times,
like literally anything. No one's asking Nylander to go drop the gloves and go toe-to-toe with Radko Gudas.
It wasn't going to be that. It was going to be a big pile-up of bodies.
And there was zero pile-up whatsoever.
No pile-up.
Yes.
But the point, like the thing about this team, it's not just that incident, right? It really, that incident is sort of the microcosm of the bigger issue, which was a lack of response all season in big moments, a lack of fight, a lack of heart, a lack of guts all season. And that's with Matthews as the captain, right? Matthews as the leader. That was an absolute sort of encapsulation of the lack of leadership on this team with the so-called leader lying on the ice. You could say that's, an indictment on the guys who should have come in, or you could say that it's an indictment on Matthews and the tone he has set. The fact that the number one goalie is saying we need to start establishing a culture now, I would say speaks to a larger issue. It wasn't just about one incident. There's a feeling in that room that there isn't a culture. They need to establish it now.
Well, and we have a audio of Brad Treliving. He spoke to Gino Reda down at the GM meetings. And again, Treliving's a guy who, by my eye, seems very uncertain about his own future. And I don't know how much can really be learned based on the final 14 games of this season. Like, I am quite certain the board of MLSE, Keith Pelly, they have a pretty good idea of what they're going to do at the end of the season regarding Treliving, regarding Berube. Again, Treliving's got 1 year left on his deal after this. So you're going to let him go into the final year of his contract. Again, there's no way he's going to get a contract extension after this.
Wow.
So, again, it kind of seems like the writing is on the wall in that respect.
And for sure, because they just witnessed the danger of the lame duck season.
Precisely.
In the final year of the Shanaplan. Everybody wants to kill Brad Treliving for trading away first-round pick for Carlo, first-round pick for Lawton. Guess who was standing over his shoulder saying, buddy, this is my last stand. Do it. We got to win. Like, I have no other choice, or I'm the president or I'm not, and it's going to be because we win in the playoffs or we don't. Make those trades. That's got nothing to do with Brad Treliving. Now, he was in the room. He could have pushed back. He might have been able to bring it to the board and say, we can't do this. This guy's in a lame duck situation. But he didn't do that. Lame duck situations at that level are incredibly dangerous for the franchise, as we just saw with Shanaplan. So, yeah, they can't let that happen again.
Yeah, and we talk about the word culture, which is a very subjective term. What does that really mean? And in the case of the Toronto Maple Leafs, they have been trying to staple guys to the core of this hockey team for many, many years in hopes that it would bring that intangible, that culture to the forefront. And obviously it has not done so. So does that culture start at the top with a new president of hockey operations, a new general manager, a new coach? And again, Craig Berube, you would think would embody that very culture that you'd be looking for if you were a team seeing its captain lying on the ground. But clearly the coach can only do so much, right? And we know and have heard in the second intermission of that game when Matthews was injured, sure, Berube went in there and tore a strip off everybody involved, and rightfully so. And they came out, go and win the game in the third period, and then they played two great back-to-back games against Buffalo and Minnesota. But why don't we take a listen to Brad Treliving with Gino Reda talking about his view of the Matthews injury and his future in Toronto.
About timelines. There's a timeline for how quickly can this team become a playoff team again. Then there's a timeline for how quickly could this team become a cup contender again. Can you share some thoughts on the timelines?
Well, like I said, those are things that as we go forward, we've got a plan to put in place, and we've underperformed this year. And as I said at the trade deadline, there's certainly some changes that we need to make. And that's all those things are the plan that we're going to formulate moving forward to get this team back to where we think it's capable of being. And so those questions will be answered, and certainly we'll look forward to letting everybody know what our plans are here as we get closer to the end of the season.
Plan will be put in place. So, again, we don't know what any of this means. It's semantics. You're trying to parse through a word salad from, frankly, a general manager that's quite uncertain about his own position. And again, he did talk about Austin Matthews as well, did Treliving, and talked about potential of a procedure. Regardless, he's going to be ready for September. But again, I think the biggest question that is overhanging this entire organization is the tipping point of reality is Matthews' future. And I think another repercussion of the injury is it kind of accelerates those conversations. He's not playing again the rest of the season. You heard his agent, Judd Moldaver, come out and just carve player safety and talk about Gudas. But I'm certain that Austin Matthews and Moldaver, everybody involved in the Matthews camp, was looking at that situation unfold on Thursday night and saying, nobody went over, did anything to Radko Gudas. That's the type of belief that the rest of the team has in their captain. That can't be a good thing for anybody involved. But again, how do you address it? I don't think the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to go out and say, you know what we need to do is go find every enforcer we can in the NHL. Like Ryan Reeves, can we get him back from San Jose? Like that they've tried that.
Yeah.
So it's more so, again, the culture and finding guys who can play with that snarl that you need, the snot that you need, to use Treliving parlance, while being able to produce like a real NHL player. And that's the line that they need to straddle here going forward. Easier said than done. Everyone's looking for those players around the NHL. So good luck finding them in a league that is virtually devoid of free agents.
That's just it, right? Like, this is not a good free agent class to be coming up with a big shopping list. And you're right, AK. This has been the tension of the Shanahan plan. Like, Shanahan pointed to this how many years ago when he talked about we lack killer instinct, right? We lack grit. He used that word, right? It's been the same issue going back, half the decade, going back to when they blew it against Montreal in 2021, going back to when they lost to Columbus in 2020, when they just did not have that mentality of stepping on an opponent's throat. They couldn't close it out. They couldn't rise to the moment. Some of that was just the, to your point, the snot. There was definitely a lack of engagement physically, but it wasn't just that, right? There was a mental block. These guys did not perform well under pressure. They did not perform well when the going got tough, and that's just as important, right? And that's what they've been lacking, and they continue to lack it. And to the point of what's happening now, this is when they perform. When all the pressure is off, when all the expectations have been dropped to the wayside, when the tent is collapsed on the ground, and Morgan Riley says they're not folding it, but we all know the thing is a lost cause. That's when they say, well, now we can play.
Well, you don't think Mateus Michelli is a 25-goal scorer in the NHL or a 40-goal scorer, the pace that he's had since returning from the Olympic break? You're right. And to try to derive anything from these final, essentially, let's call it the last 20 games of the season, where it became abundantly clear that nothing was happening with regards to the playoffs, that's a dangerous game, too.
Yes.
The last thing you can do is start to fall in love with Bo Grew. And God love him. He's been great. But, I wouldn't be putting his name in pencil or in pen, certainly, into my opening day lineup for 2026, that regular season. And again, the same goes for other guys who are going to be given opportunities down the stretch. Or Michelli would be yet another example. Like, I'm not looking at this as anything real.
No.
So that's a very big concern. It's great that they're doing it, and these guys deserve opportunities. And frankly, you wonder if I don't know, you give all these opportunities to Calle Yarncroke and Steven Lorentz and Max Domi and Michelli in the early part of the season. What if Bo Grew is getting those opportunities? We'll never know. But at the same time, that's another dangerous aspect that I think we're going to have here is you would hope that even if the Maple Leafs did finish strong, and let's say they won a bunch more games and they finished with the 20th worst record in the NHL, and they gave the Bruins the 12th pick in the draft, careful. That's a slippery slope to be relying on these meaningless games when you're playing free, you're playing with any type of pressure, or you're just kind of playing for yourself more than anything else, because that's a dicey proposition. And you would hope that the guys in charge would understand that their bet has been made. You know what this is. You know what changes need to be made. Be careful evaluating something that really doesn't have that much meaning.
Yeah, exactly. You know, there are no stakes anymore.
Zero.
And this team's problem has been performing when there are stakes. So you're right. To pretend that it's the same thing, that this game is as important as the games that were played when they actually still had a chance this season. No, they're not the same thing. The cause is lost. It's over. And now, to your point, yeah, Bo Grew, like, he should go out there and try and light it up.
Good for him, man.
But if he does light it up.
Cheer for that guy.
But it also raises a question. It's an indictment on the club if they had guys with the Marlies that could perform at this level that didn't get opportunities. When how often were we talking about their lack of scoring depth? How often were we talking about the underperformance of the bottom six all season? Right? We were talking about that an awful lot.
Ogre's one of the top scorers in the AHL.
And why? And the question is, like, why wasn't this? If he's so good, if you believe in him so much, why wasn't he brought up a lot earlier when you had guys that should have been put under pressure to perform, should have been sat in the press box in favor of a call up and weren't?
Well, where do you stand on this tank versus no tank thing? Because again, the Leafs could still tank. Again, I think this 3-game stretch probably an aberration. I don't think they're going to play overly well here. And you look at their games coming up, they've got the Islanders, they've got Carolina, and Ottawa, 3 teams that are definitely playing for something. And again, you're without Matthews. I know their record without him is incredibly good, but you would think there would be a drop-off when you're playing, Tavares, Domi, Quillen, Grew down the middle, right? Like, that's a tough pill to swallow over a prolonged stretch. So do you think it is in the best interest for the Maple Leafs to lose out and do their best to get as low as possible? Or are you in the camp of, whatever, just give the pick to Boston and you don't have to roll it over to the next 2 seasons? And it does perhaps give you a little bit more flexibility as far as your plan going forward. Which camp are you in?
I mean, ideally, I think you'd rather keep it. If you could find a way to get a top 5 pick, I mean, you would want that, right? Because let's face it here. I know people are saying, well, long term, it might be better to give it up now so you don't have, you will give an unprotected pick the following year, right? Oof. Which is scary. But if you, now let's get serious here. If you believe in the plan, and to my knowledge, the plan is to bounce back quick and have a really good season next year. If you believe that's actually going to happen, and you better believe it if you're the one operating it that way, then you're better off to have the player now. You're better off to have the asset now. I mean, it's always better to have it in hand now than later.
Definitely. Well, again, I think it would also make, again, in theory, if there are major changes to the organization, it would probably make the job a little bit more attractive, right?
Yeah.
If you're taking over as GM, okay, well, we got a top 5 pick in the drawer. We got a future number 1 defenseman. Maybe we have Keaton Verhoff on our team going forward. Again, you're all of a sudden, okay, well, that's a bright spot. He could play for us maybe the next couple of years and emerges as a quality asset. But I don't know. It's an interesting one, man. There's so much uncertainty.
But you could do it.
It's such a complex issue, that and everything else associated. You could do it. I think the problem that they have, and we saw it this weekend, it's Woll and Stolars are your problem. You can't be playing these guys if you're trying to lose, because they are going to steal points for you. And we saw it against Buffalo with Woll. We saw it with Stolars last night against Minnesota. I mean, they're good goalies. And it doesn't matter how many shots they face, how many high danger chances, they will steal games for you. And I don't know, Artur Akiyama just got a 3-year contract extension, which again, I mean, why not? And again, I think it really speaks to the uncertainty, top to bottom in the organization, that they are still playing for something. We're seeing Florida sit its guys. Marchand, oh, you know what, buddy, go hang out at the beach, and eventually you'll see Matthew Tkachuk take a seat. You're seeing Sam Reinhart sit. Bobrovsky's splitting time. Florida knows that their pick is top 10 protected, and they're going to lose some hockey games down the stretch. It seems like the Leafs are, well, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, because
there's a lot of uncertainty.
And I don't like that if I'm Keith Pelly, because here's the thing. There's an easy narrative here, okay? You don't have to ask the players to stop playing. You don't do that. You have a bunch of guys who've had chronic injuries.
It starts with a goaltending for me.
You've had health issues in goal all year. So Stolars and Wall, who've had a very difficult time staying in the crease all season, guess what? You take some time, fellas. We're going to need you at full strength next year. You do whatever you need to do. Get your saunas and cold tubs and physios and chiropractors. You do whatever you need to do. We're good without you. We're going to try and develop Hildeby and Akhtiamov, right? Okay?
Yeah.
That's where you start. Matthew Nyes, you've had a chronic injury all year. You went back to Scottsdale during the Olympic break to try and treat it. Still bothering you. You sit the rest of the games out, or most of them, to work on that because we need you top form at the beginning of next season. And we know this is a very difficult injury that's held you back and really had a setback season. I mean, you go down the list. There's been a bunch of guys who've been nursing stuff all year. You can take out half your lineup, bring up a bunch of Marlies. Yeah, you may win a couple, but you're not going to win too many.
Well, and again, I think if this was an organization that has sense of direction as to it being a certain one, like, again, Tree Living Berube, they don't care right now about the tank or bringing up anybody or putting anybody in a disadvantageous position. They are trying to win games because perhaps if they win a bunch, let's say they win 9 of the final 14, does that do anything with regards to their job status? I would hope not, but perhaps it does. Maybe they view it as, listen, it doesn't matter to me. We're trying to win. There's no guarantees that I'm going to be around next year anyways.
You're right.
And again, that's where if I was Keith Pelly, I'd be calling down, boys, tank's officially on here. We can't be winning these games. You can't be beating Minnesota. Again, I'm totally with you. You got to get that draft pick in the cupboard as soon as possible. And again, there are no guarantees. Even if you get down to the 7th or 6th worst record, it gives you a better chance to draft in the top 5. That's all you're looking for. And sure, could it result in Boston selecting 6th or 7th? Yes. And that would be a terrible, terrible outcome for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and it really exacerbate just how horrible that Brandon Carlo trade was last year. But at the same time, you got to make do with what you've got, and that is their best course of action. And yet, they're winning these games, which I don't think puts them in the best position to succeed going forward.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. And look, I mean, you could say, look, I've heard people say, well, just play it like it is. I mean, hey, the New York Islanders won the draft lottery last year with a 3.5% chance, and they got Matthew Schaefer.
And we'll see him in town tomorrow night, probably ripping home a couple of goals, having himself a night in front of his hometown crowd.
So they were 10th worst, I think, when they got those odds. I mean, the Leafs right now, I think, according to points percentage, the Leafs were 9th worst heading into today. So maybe you just say, play it as it lies and hope for luck in the lottery balls.
Good karma is what maybe the Leafs will be looking for. But if you don't mess with the lottery gods, maybe they'll be on your side.
But here's the other thing. It's not like we're making up chronic problems here. Like, those goalies haven't been healthy. They would benefit from an extended rest here down the stretch to take them into an offseason where they could, work on their bodies and try and become a little more robust and resilient. Certainly, hopefully a little more than they've been, because, of course, they haven't been very robust and resilient at all as NHLers. These are not fake problems. You're not making anything up. To me, it's not an unethical thing to say we've got guys with injuries that need treatment.
And I'd also say it would probably be good for guys like Dennis Hildeby and Artur Akhtiamov to get more starts in the NHL. Right. Just in the event that you do make some major transaction in the offseason that does feature Joseph Woll or Anthony Stolars, which I do think remains the most intriguing roster question beyond, the Matthews possible whatever happens there. Matthew Nyes, we know there was some discussion with him at the deadline. Wall would bring you back a very nice haul from somebody if you made a trade. Stolars, I'm not so sure what his value is considering the season that he's had, the age, but he's a number 1-ish goalie.
Here's the other thing. The reason both those guys don't bring you back anything automatically is one reason: health concerns.
Yes.
So you got to take care of those. Guess what? Playing more games doesn't help that, okay? It's playing meaningless hockey in front of a team that's going to be scrambling around with a bunch of Marlies in the lineup is not going to help Anthony Stolars, okay? He'll do it, but how does that help him?
It's a very fair point. Again, it was kind of a lost season for him early on. He's been much better since coming back from whatever nerve issue he was dealing with, and hopefully for Stolars, and maybe not hopefully for Maple Leaf fans, we'll see how it goes in the final 14 games of the regular season. Frank Corrado's on the show today at 5 o'clock. We're looking forward to that. We'll catch up with Keegan Matheson on the other side. And my new favorite golfer on the PGA Tour is on the show, Dave. I'm going to take a stab at pronouncing his name. Are you ready? Sudarshan Yellamara. How did I do?
Very well.
Thank you. I did Google his name, and the first thing that came up was a column you wrote on him 2 or 3 years ago. And look at him yesterday at the Players' Championship. T5, bringing home $925,000. The 24-year-old who plays out of Mississauga, born in India, moves to Winnipeg when he's 4, moves to Mississauga when he's 11, and look at him now. He's a stud on the PGA Tour on OverDrive at 5:30.
And it's too bad the boys aren't here because, I mean, he's a Winnipeg guy and a Toronto guy.
The best of both worlds.
Both of OverDrive's hometowns.
That's exactly
You know,
it.
so-
That's
and he's a
exactly
golf
it.
guy.
He
And
is.
he's a self-made guy, man.
I love
It's
this
an
guy.
incredible story.
I love him. He learned how to play golf on YouTube. I watch a lot of YouTube golf. I still suck. Sudarshan, dominant. Now, he's got that beautiful lefty swing as well. We love Sudarshan. Looking forward to him joining the show in about an hour.
Maybe Hayes can get him putting right-handed.
Yeah, maybe. That's what he might need. I'm Aaron Korolnik. That's Dave Festruck. Keegan Matheson coming up on the other side. Maybe from his hotel room in Dunedin. I'm sure he's clamoring to get out of there. Home opener for the Jays right around the corner next Friday against the Athletics, the homeless Athletics. Where are they from? Sacramento,
heading to
Oakland,
Vegas.
Vegas.
Maybe Vegas.
Yes, and there's some news about Vegas as well in the NBA, which we'll get to a little bit later. Korolnik, Festruck, this is OverDrive.
Back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you more ways to play your game your way. Korolnik and Feschuk in for the trio today. Brian will be back tomorrow, but O'Neill and McLennan on a well-deserved March break. Well-deserved. And I guess that's what the people with kids in school do this week.
Yeah.
Go on vacations and do a bunch of fun stuff around the city if they stay in Toronto, right?
As they should. As they should. The boys need a little rest, a little load management before the big stretch run here.
That's it. Very much, very much. So some big news today. The NHL announcing that Calgary, Edmonton, and Prague will host the 2028 World Cup of Hockey. And it got me thinking about the future of international, I guess not just with hockey, but also with baseball too. With the World Baseball Classic ongoing, which has been a huge success. Aaron Judge pumping the tires of it. And you're thinking back to the Four Nations, the World Cup of Hockey in a couple of years, and you wonder, are these leagues just going to take over all the international play, considering MLB's reaping the benefits financially of the World Baseball Classic? The NHL reaped the benefits of the Four Nations face-off. And I know the Olympic Games are coming up in 2028, and the baseball players want to play, but is the World Baseball Classic sufficient to the point where they don't need to send their guys in the middle of the summer and stop the season? What do you think?
I think you just answered it yourself there. The players want the Olympics. And that's been the case with the hockey players. That's been the case with the basketball players in the NBA, even though there's plenty of NBA owners that would rather their guys not be playing a tournament in the middle of the summer. And I believe that's the case with these Major League Baseball players. And this one, like the baseball one's going to be a one-off because it's like a special circumstance. Because the LA. Olympics are in LA.
Yeah.
And because it's in America, it's doable to include the Major League Baseball players for the first time in an Olympics. And I think there's a real push from the Players Association to get involved.
That would be really, really fun. And I'm sure our next guest would be covering it in some capacity, staying there for many, many days on end. Joining us live from Dunedin is our friend Keegan Matheson from MLB.com. Keegan, the idea of going to LA versus staying in Dunedin for another prolonged period, I'm sure that really appeals to you, correct?
I'd go to the surface of the sun at this point, fellas. Goodness, what day are we on here?
Yeah.
But LA sounds okay.
Yeah. You must be getting close to the end now, right? I mean, how many days have you been in Dunedin? And when is your flight back to Toronto?
This is day 36, and at this time next week, I'll be on my couch with a frosty Guinness. It will not be my first. Flying home next Monday. So it's been a good ride, fellas. I typically take a break in the middle, but I stayed down the full time this time. So it's been a long one. But we're getting there, you know. There's worse places to be too. I know that's not a sympathetic audience to complain to as I speak to people shoveling in the last few weeks. So it's been good, but man, oh man, I cannot wait to get back to my couch, and I cannot wait to cover a baseball game that matters because I've covered a lot of stretching and a lot of practice here for 4 weeks. So I'm ready to get back.
Well, next Friday, the home opener, Kevin Gausman will toe the rubber for the Jays. We'll get to that in just a moment, but what does your intuition tell you about baseball at the Olympics in 2028? Because there certainly are pros and cons of playing in that if you are Major League Baseball. What do you think happens there?
Where my mind goes, guys, is you know how athletes want to be musicians, musicians want to be athletes. Calling yourself an Olympian is that one more thing a great athlete can do. If you're Aaron Judge, you're Bryce Harper, if you're Vladdy, you're Tatis, you're Soto, any of these big stars, you can call yourself an Olympian now. And I think that's going to be too tempting for players. And I think that, guys, these two things don't need to be rivals. I think that the momentum internationally can begin to snowball here because this WBC has been fantastic. Okay, it takes a lot to get me to watch baseball outside of my work, okay, because I'm at the ballpark all day. I don't typically go home and watch more baseball at night. That's when I like to shut off. I can't stop watching the WBC. This is fantastic. You're getting people interested, people caring about it at an international level like we've never seen before, and I think that's momentum. I think that carries into the Olympics. Like you say, maybe it's a one-off. We'll see where that goes, but the opportunity to call yourself an Olympian is going to be real tempting for all these guys.
Keegan, I got to say, I was with you. I was riveted to this WBC, and I'm wondering, was the WBC and what happened last night with the ending of the great Dominican-American game, was that the ultimate advertisement for the ABS balls and strikes system?
Sure was. Man, if you have a classic case of one that needed a review. Okay. Nobody is trying to screw over a hitter. This is not complete malpractice. An umpire's job is hard, but there are moments where you need it. Okay. And I think when a lot of people hear robot umpires, they're either picturing an actual robot or automatic balls on strike for every single pitch. This, guys, is why I like the ABS challenge system, where teams just have 2 or 3 that you save up and store throughout the game for major moments. Okay, I respect umpires and the job they do. I couldn't do it, okay? But for major moments, you need the ability to challenge. And for it to end that way for the Dominican, which is the most fun I've had watching a baseball team ever. I mean, what a collection of talent, what a style of play that just celebrates their own skills and their own baseball culture. For it to end like that, damn, man, that is tough. So I hope that that's something that becomes normal across all forms of baseball. But good Lord, just the biggest example you could imagine.
Yeah, well said. Keegan Matheson, our guest from MLB.com, covers the Toronto Blue Jays, who return home next Friday night, hosting the Athletics. Kevin Gausman will be pitching the opening day game for Toronto, which is no surprise, Keegan. But what was a surprise is the most recent status of Jose Barrios, where looked like he was good to go. Then he has this insurance checkup on his elbow before he was going to represent Puerto Rico. Did not go well. Now there's a second opinion happening today for Barrios. Does not look overly likely he's going to be ready for opening day. What do you think's going on with Barrios, and does that really maybe make some sense as to why Max Scherzer might be such an important part of this team going forward?
Yeah, at this point with Jose, I'd be shocked if he's ready for opening day. I don't see that being realistic at all. But the information here has been interesting to track. I guess I'll say it that way. So the MRI that happened first, it's because he wanted to go to the WBC. To do that, you've got to pass insurance. That's the only reason an MRI happened. Jose hadn't been feeling anything. He hadn't been wincing on the mound or any of that. He actually looked good. His velocity was back. He looked confident. That this was the Barrios that the Blue Jays traded for and extended, who was a damn good pitcher. Okay, I know the last year wasn't good. That's a damn good pitcher. And now this pops up. And now he's going to be going to get that in-person visit with Dr. Elatrash, or Dr. Meister, sorry, the other guy. Players do not visit him for fun, okay? This is ideally routine, and the Blue Jays think this is just part of the process, but pitchers don't visit him for fun. So if you're the Blue Jays, you've got to hope this is just inflammation that you slowly get out of there. But the important part, guys, is that John Schneider said this is different inflammation from last year. So for 10 years, Jose Barrios was the Iron Man, okay? You could not get this guy off the mound. It was his thing. Now, in back-to-back years, in about a 6-month period, he's gone through a bit of a dip in performance. He's had one type of inflammation, now 2 types of inflammation. These things tend to happen this way. They build up and build up. Going to be really interesting, guys. This is going to be a big news update here the next couple days that we get from the Blue Jays. But opening day, I think, has got to be out of the question by now, even if this is good news. And the lazy answer all along, guys, has been that the Blue Jays rotation would take care of itself. Always does. It's done that again here. Max Scherzer slides right in.
Well, that's the question I wanted to ask you. I mean, we know from experience, Keegan, that opening day doesn't mean that much. Last year's opening day starter was Barrios. He was the opening day starter 3 of the past 4 years. The other guy in there, Alek Manoah, no longer around. So this is kind of a ceremonial thing about who's ready on opening day. It really doesn't matter who starts. It matters who finishes. But given the fact that you got Scherzer at his advanced age, you got Bieber with an uncertain health situation, you got Trey Savage being, handled with, vigorous care, let's say, in spring training. I mean, what looked like a massive surplus isn't really that massive anymore. And how do you sort of make sense of it?
I like vigorous care. He is being aggressively cared for in spring training. This surplus, guys, has come back down to a spot I didn't think it would be at already, okay? The Blue Jays are fortunate they have Eric Lauer in there as a number 6, essentially. But if this season starts, let's say everything goes well, Barrios just needs a bit, but he's not quite ready. You have that Gausman, CC Savage, Scherzer, Ponce. Okay, that's a good start. But if Trey Savage is only going to throw 50 or 60 pitches his first couple of times out, you probably need Eric Lauer to piggyback off of that. this gets thin pretty quickly, okay? And you are hoping for a lot of things to go right. Now, I trust Gausman, I trust Dylan Cease fully, completely. But Trey Savage, there's the workload component to that. That's going to be a factor. Max Scherzer says he is beyond his thumb, and I am not one to question Max Scherzer, never would, because I'm too smart to do that. But he's got a history. We'll see. And then Cody Ponce is coming back to the big leagues after rediscovering himself in Japan and Korea. Love the signing. Really excited by the pitcher, but there still needs to be some prove it there as well. So this has really gone from a massive strength and a problem of where the hell do these pitchers go to what looks like a normal rotation, what other teams are dealing with, where you're one bad news away from this getting a little risky again. So luckily the Blue Jays had that depth, but they need the rest of this to go right. Long enough to get Berrios back, long enough to get Shane Bieber back. That's going to be the big news this week, guys. If Bieber gets off the mound, okay? This has been slow and drawn out, longer than I thought, frankly. If he gets off the mound this week, cool. He's probably 6 weeks away from being back. You're probably set. But if that's a little longer, then it's just too many questions, too many things we're talking about.
Well, it's wild because it wasn't long ago we looked at Max Scherzer and we tried to figure out, why does this guy want to sign with the Toronto Blue Jays? There's no way he's going to start games at any point soon. And just a couple weeks later, he becomes a very important cog to a rotation that has a lot of question marks. Keegan, thank you for doing this, buddy. Best of luck over the final week down in Dunedin. And that Frosty Guinness will taste delightful when you return home next week.
I see the light, fellas. Thank you. We'll talk soon.
Thank you very much. That is Keegan Matheson joining us here on OverDrive. Do not think the Dome is going to be open next Friday night. March 27th.
Dude, I just looked at the forecast, and I'm so depressed. It's like single digits for like the next 10 days.
Well, I was texting with Duthie and Koliakovo this morning, and golf course out in the west end of Toronto is opening up on Monday, and Duthie's like, oh, yeah, 3 degrees. That's going to be a beautiful day. And I'm like, dude, I love golf. I'm not that desperate where I'm going to play in 50-kilometer winds and 4 degrees and bundling up to no, like, it's just not in my level of interest at all.
If you got to if you've got to bring the winter golf gloves,
come on.
it's just not really that fun. It really is.
What was it? 1977 in Exhibition Stadium was a snowstorm.
Yeah.
In the first Blue Jays game.
That's right.
And it could probably very well be the same thing next Friday night. Unfortunately, they have a dome this time around in 2026.
Yeah. Like the TFC just had their opener on Saturday. It was freezing.
I couldn't believe that. By the way, let's talk about BMO Field, the structure.
Oh, my goodness.
Doogie was showing us some of the pictures of the new grandstand that they built for the World Cup. Ooh. Hope I don't get those tickets.
Oh my God! It looks. I mean, it's let's talk about one thing. It's ugly as sin.
It's not aesthetically pleasing. Let's be diplomatic.
Yeah, it is terrible.
Yes.
It's a blight on our community. Okay, and the fact that they're going to, and not only is it ugly and looks very rickety. Although I'm sure it's very structurally sound.
It does. It looks like my high school bleachers. Is what
it just looks like. I wouldn't want to be up there. I'll tell you that right now.
Well.
I ain't going up there. You can go. Enjoy it, but and then the fact that the tickets are going to be outrageously priced. They're already outrageously priced. Everybody's getting in there on $10,000 a pop or whatever it's going to be, and you're going to
$10,000 a pop.
Well, I don't know what it is. I'm sure there will be $10,000
for the Canada games.
Yeah,
those would be the expensive ones, and then there's a quarterfinal game that could very well feature like an England and France or Croatia, someone really good. Those games in particular, I do wonder, if Qatar's playing like some other nation down at BMO Field, again, we'll see how it all plays out. Or Italy, that would definitely be a different
Italy will be
circumstance.
sold out.
Italy would be a huge draw. But some of the other games, I wonder just how well it'll be full. It's a World Cup game.
The World Cup.
It is, but not to the same level of anticipation, say for a Canada game or one of those marquee nations.
And maybe one of those,
yeah.
if it's a nation that doesn't have fans that travel, maybe it won't be as high demand. I agree with you.
Like I have a buddy who's going, he's going to Boston for Scotland, Haiti. And I'm like, wow, but the Scots, they travel.
And
like that'll be 50,000 blackout Scotsmen ready to fire for Scott McTominay and company
without a doubt.
In Boston.
Without a doubt.
Maybe it's in New York. I can't remember. I can't
Whatever it is. But yeah, look, I mean, I hope it works out, but the stadium does not look great, and we'll see how it goes.
Well, I'm more worried about the infrastructure and the logistical concerns getting in and out of the city around that time. As an avid golfer myself, I got to drive through on the QEW, or excuse me, on the Gardner to the QEW, how that's all going to work out. Should be an interesting time nonetheless. I'm sure they'll have it all worked out down at City Hall. They know what they're doing.
We never screw anything up.
They know what they're doing. That's Dave Feschuk. I'm Aaron Korolnik. Frank Corrado will join us in about 15 minutes. We've got the next young star of Canadian golf joining us at 5:30, Sudarian Yellamara on the show as well. OverDrive continues here on TSN.
Now, back to OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a minute.
Korolnik Feschuk with you. This is OverDrive on TSN's YouTube channel. TSN's YouTube channel. You know, that's how you correctly pronounce things, Dave. You know, it's only my profession here, broadcasting. Maybe one day I'll figure things out. Also up on TSN 1050. Guy who's really figured things out in the National Hockey League, Bobby McMahon,
Wow.
How about his performance coming out of the Olympic break for the Leafs, where didn't do much of anything, goes to Seattle for a second-round pick in 2026, a fourth-rounder in 2027, or maybe I have those two things mixed up. Regardless, McMahon, 5 points in 2 games since joining the Kraken. He's playing with Beniers and Eberle, and he is thriving, and he is going to make himself some serious cash this offseason if he continues to play the way that he's playing.
Well, everybody that got traded out of Toronto suddenly exploded. Bobby McMahon, 3 goals.
Off the sinking ship.
3 goals, 2 assists in those 2 games, as you point out. Scotty Lawton had 2 goals and an assist in his first 2 games in L.A. Nick Waugh, 2 goals in 5 games out in Seattle. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
It is. And McMahon looks great, man. And good for him. These guys were given kind of a second lease on life after things going really off the rails with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And Nick Waugh's on a team that can absolutely win the Stanley Cup. Scott Lawrence on a team that's using him in a more, I'd say, proper fashion than the Leafs were, where he was playing essentially on the fourth line and Lawrence on the second power play, playing 15 minutes a night. And Bobby McMahon, I mean, he was playing on the top line with Matthews at times, but it seems like he's a great fit in Seattle, and you have to wonder what type of deal he could be in line for. We know the Kiefer Sherwood contract that he signed after getting traded to San Jose, $575 over a 5-year term. I'm cheering for Bobby McMahon. He is a great story. Guy was in the ECHL not long ago, and now he's on the verge of a life-changing payday as a UFA in a market where they're essentially devoid of quality NHL players, guys who can play in your top 6, and it looks like Bobby McMahon is fitting in very well with Seattle.
And look, this is a big moment for him, right? This is a guy who's 29 years old. I mean, you're not going to get many chances like this to be when you've been toiling. It took you a long time to make it to the NHL, as it did for Bobby McMahon, a very late bloomer. This is a big moment, and it wasn't looking particularly good there before the trade deadline when he was in a bit of a slump, and he wasn't the only Leaf that was in a bit of a slump because they couldn't win. And yeah, you got to be happy for him. The one thing about Bobby McMahon, very hard worker, very beloved by his teammates, and no doubt about that. And I'm sure he's beloved by his new teammates now that he's
certainly
absolutely tearing it apart.
And his new coach in Seattle, they're loving what they're getting from McMahon. But again, it just kind of reaffirms the difficult spot the Maple Leafs find themselves in when Bobby McMahon legitimately is one of the best forwards available as a free agent. And that is not a slight on Bobby McMahon. That is a slight on the free agent class of 2026. The top dogs there: Alex Tuck, Darren Radish, Rasmus Anderson.
Yeah. Good players.
Mason Marchment. This is what you're talking about here. And it's not just the Toronto Maple Leafs who'll be vying for their services. These guys are going to get some crazy contracts because the salary cap is going up. Teams are going to be desperate to add talent, and there are very few players available because everybody re-signs.
Yeah.
Everybody re-signs for the most part. And we'll see what happens with Alex Tuck. He could re-sign in Buffalo. That is definitely within the realm of possibility the season that they're having. He's having a great year. Tough sledding, man. Darren Radish, the belle of the ball. Who would have predicted that a year ago?
Yeah, there's been talk that the Leafs might be interested in him.
I'm sure they would be. Why wouldn't they be?
Well, the reason you wouldn't be is because
buy high. You don't want to buy high on Radish?
High because you want to develop a guy like Darren Radish. You want to find the unplucked gem, so to speak, and bring him up through your system and then turn him into something that you can sell or trade or just have the benefit of for many years. And that's been the problem. Like the Leafs, when you look at their defense core, like, okay, we got Bo Grew coming up and Quillen's been up, and that's great. Like, where's the next defenseman? When you've got everybody in the defense core, I mean, Carlo's 29, everybody else is 30 plus. They need some young defensemen in a hurry here. And, where's it going to be? Maybe it just will be buy high on Radish and hopefully
buy high on Radish. Tanev comes back. You've got Ekman Larson. You've got Jake McCabe. There's your top 4.
And maybe whether Morgan Riley comes back, with his, complete no move clause, that'll be his decision. But, there's obviously some feelings that maybe a change of scenery wouldn't hurt him.
Well, you would think Radish would be looking for at least 7.5 on a free agent deal, right?
Your point.
He might have 70 points.
It's a market deal. Like if there's no other choices for GMs that need a defenseman, he's going to be able to name a price that's a lot higher than he might otherwise.
We'll get Frank Corrado's thoughts on that. He's going to join us to kick off hour 2. Sudarian Yellamara, T5 at the Players calls in at 5:30. I'm Aaron Korolnik. That's Dave Feschuk. Hour 2 of OverDrive next.
Memory of a Killer. All new tonight on CTV. Stream tomorrow on Crave.
This is OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog on TSN 1050.
Second hour, this is OverDrive. Korolnik, Feschuk in for Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog. Frank Corrado is going to join us momentarily. Sudarian Yellamara, whose name I am really getting good at saying.
You are.
And this is was my concern heading into today's program. When Doogie told us that Sudarian was going to join the show, finished T5, Dave, at the Players. And he was unbelievable. Like, this guy's playing in front of Scotty Scheffler, in front of Rory McIlroy. Was just 19th on the Corn Ferry Tour, a Canadian, lives in Mississauga, spent his formative years in Winnipeg. I mean, he is really taking a big step, and I made it my personal mission to pronounce his name correctly as much as I could. So kudos to me.
And you're doing it really well. And thankfully, like, you got a little practice because the guys on the PGA Tour broadcast
Saying it a lot.
saying it a lot on the weekend.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Well, another name we're saying a lot these days is Austin Matthews. And it's time for something to chew on, brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. Enjoy $15 lunch at BP where you get an entree, a side, and a drink. You'll get it all in 20 minutes or less. A fast lunch doesn't have to be fast food. See you for a $15 fast lunch at your local Boston Pizza. On OverDrive's Twitter account, at OverDrive1050, why are the Maple Leafs succeeding without Austin Matthews in the lineup? The options: increased team game, sense of embarrassment, too much focus on 34, or better lineups. Where do you cast your vote, Dave?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the embarrassment factor for sure.
I'm with you.
I think the embarrassment factor that they were widely, absolutely criticized, and rightly so, for not responding to the Radko Gudas hit. And then they responded. Like, they didn't respond, and then Berube presumably chewed them out in the dressing room. And ever since then, 5 of a possible 6 points in the standings, they're rolling. And I also think there's the other thing we talked about at the top of the show. All the pressure's off now, man. The season's lost. There is no expectation. In fact, the expectation is we wouldn't mind if you lost. And here they go to say, now is the time we turn it on.
Well, let's call it what it is. The Toronto Maple Leafs were a national embarrassment for the last 5 days, right? I mean, everybody's talking about it across NHL on TNT. You're seeing the Kachuk Brothers podcast talk about it. We're talking about it. Everybody's talking about it, and no one is speaking glowingly about the Toronto Maple Leafs and their response. Inevitably, they are going to respond with, again, you saw Joe Wall get bumped on Saturday. Look at Morgan Riley, everyone grabbing the guys on Buffalo. Like, you have to do it. If you have the slightest shred of pride in your profession, you've got to step up and play with more pace, more energy, and that's exactly what the Maple Leafs have been doing for the 3 games now since Matthews has been hurt. How long can they sustain that? Remains to be seen, but needless to say, we'll find out tomorrow night when the Islanders come to town. Let's head to the Maple Toyota hotline, where Frank Corrado, TSN hockey analyst, joining us live from Montreal, wearing his Carrying Place T-shirt. Chesko, great to see you. Thank you for doing this.
What's going on, boys? Great to be with you. What are we talking about?
Well, why don't you answer that question? There's something to chew on. Why are the Leafs playing so well without Matthews? Do you think it is purely about the embarrassment that they have been subjected to nationally since the lack of response on Thursday against Anaheim?
They're not playing well. They're winning games. Joseph Wall's playing unbelievable. Like, they're shooting the lights out right now, but they are not playing well. Like, they're not carrying possession. They're getting a lucky streak of hockey at the wrong time in their season. And, you know, you can't look at anything and say, like, oh, they're forechecking so much better. They have the puck a lot. None of those things are true right now. They are getting carried at the wrong time by some players that are having spikes in their shooting percentage and a goalie that is playing unbelievable.
Well, Frankie, I was looking at the overall stats of this season, to your point. They're second last in the league in shot differential. Only Chicago's been outshot worse than them on a night-to-night basis. I mean, when you look at that number and the point that you're making about how they're not carrying possession at all, because that's a good proxy for possession as any, I mean, how much do you put on Berube's tactics, and how much do you put on the fact that this team just doesn't play for Berube, in terms of will over skill?
So I was kind of looking back at some of the early season projections today because all these analytic companies, they have these models that you kind of punch the roster into and, the schedule and the strength of it, and it gives you a point projection. The Leafs were around 100 points on all these different things, like all these different models. And so, when you look at the way that they have performed this season and you see where they're at, like, I guess they were supposed to be a 100-point team. If everyone played the way they're supposed to and they lived up to their expectations, that means power play was good, goaltending was good. The guys who had to score scored goals, but it didn't happen. So, a big part of that is, do they play the right system for the players that they have? And do they really want to, do they want to dig in? Do they want to compete? Because you can make up for a lot of lack of skill, and you can make up for a cold shooting percentage with just a little bit of will, a little bit of willingness to do a little bit more. And, you can't sit here and look back at this season and say that that has been the case. If anything, it's been the opposite way. So, Dave, to answer your question, there's probably the wrong philosophy of the way this team should be playing. And some of that has to fall on the coach. Some of it has to fall on the GM for assembling the team the way they are. And ultimately, the players are the ones playing. So that has to fall on them as well, because they never overcame the adversity that they found this season.
Frank, we were talking about the repercussions from the Matthews injury, the Gudas knee, the lack of response, everything that has ensued since. And I am curious to know your thoughts on how you think that could affect the team building of the Toronto Maple Leafs going forward. An incident like that, I would call it the crescendo of the season. I think you look at it as maybe the defining moment of the season, perhaps the era of the Toronto Maple Leafs that has been. If you were tree living or the people above him, does that do anything, the lack of response, with how you're looking to build the team this offseason?
Well, how does it not? How does it not do anything for you if you're in charge? How many different examples does the group need to say, hey, we have to be proactive in these kinds of situations, and no one can take liberties at our players? Did you guys see what happened with Draisaitl last night? He gets hit by Ozzy Weisblatt, and the whole night it was, we are getting Ozzy Weisblatt back. Last night I called the Montreal game, and Kirby Dach got hit. It was a clean hit. The guy who hit him was Jeffrey Viel, plays for Anaheim. The rest of the night, anytime Arbor Jackeye was on the ice with him, poking him, shoving him, shouting at him, same with Josh Anderson. It was they made a point of making sure that, hey, man, we're going to do everything we can to make sure you're uncomfortable the rest of the night. Now, the crazy thing is Viel had a nice assist for the winner, and he wouldn't fight any of those guys. But we're that's besides the point. AK, do you remember when Morgan Riley cross-checked Ridley Gregg for that slap shot into the empty net? And that play was an overcompensation at the time for the team being called out for not sticking up for one another and not having that jam and that juice. And Morgan Riley took a 5-game suspension or a 6-game suspension? It was an overcompensation. And now what we're seeing is another one because of what happened with Austin Matthews. But I would say, what happened in between then? Why did it not go from, okay, we're going to overcompensate on this thing, however long ago that was, and we're not going to let up because we've learned our lesson. But now it's the same group, same players that are on the ice in that situation, and here you go, star players down on the ice. So as far as how that affects things, I mean, put yourself in Austin Matthews' shoes. If you're him and his agent, and you're talking about where you want to be long term, he deals with a lot here. He's been hurt a lot. And now on top of it, he sees other star players and even just regular players on other teams get hit and go down, and everyone makes a big issue about it, and no one made a big issue for it here in Toronto. Yeah, so I would imagine it would be natural to start having the conversations about what does this look like in the long term? I think it's just a natural reaction.
Frankie, you can look at that a couple of ways, right? If you're Austin Matthews and you want to look outwardly, you could say, hey, what's that say about my teammates that they don't come to my defense, right? What's that say about my teammates that they don't jump Radko Gudas and make his life hell for the rest of the night? You could also say, if you were a little more introspective, what's it say about me that they don't come to defend me?
Sure. Yeah,
Where do you lie? Where do you sort of sit on that continuum of how much of this is on the captain for setting the culture that exists on this team?
So I would put it to you this way. If Toronto was known as a team that was always in scrums and getting after guys and they never let their guard down and they stuck up for everyone, that includes Anthony Stolarz earlier this season. If that was the case and nothing happened with Austin Matthews, Dave, I think you're right. I think you look at that introspectively and say, well, why am I, like, did I do something? Like, is it me? But we have more than enough evidence now with this group that not necessarily about the individual. It's about all the individuals within this group that, like, for some reason, it feels like all these things happen and it's muted and it's like this vanilla reaction. Whereas if that happens on, I would say, just about every other team, like there's something going down. Remember last year, like the Buffalo Sabres, Alex Tuck got hit really hard. I think it was Nason. Nason hit him at like right at the blue line. It was a big hit. And like no one did anything. And that was a big issue in Buffalo. And now you look at the Sabres, Dahlin's getting cross-checked. He's fighting. He's like, there's been like a galvanizing moment within that Buffalo Sabres group where you look at it and say, they're not looking back anymore. Toronto never had that, like, we're not looking back anymore galvanizing moment. And they've had plenty of opportunities to do it. And, you know, furthermore to that, it's not like not every player is going to be comfortable fighting Radko Gudas. Like, I could tell you firsthand, I was never a guy that wanted to get into a fight. Like, it just wasn't for me. But if it's just the mentality of all the players saying, we're all in there, he can't punch all four of us in the face, he can't fight all four of us, and the worst case, we're just going to jump on him, and we're just going to say, you can't do this anymore. But maybe it just feels like if you're one guy going in alone, the pack leaves you behind. The same way that the pack left behind Austin Matthews when he got kneed. So there is no pack mentality.
Frank Corrado, TSN hockey analyst, our guest here in the second hour of Overdrive. So Bo Grew scores twice last night for the Leafs. Couple of nice goals, too.
Yeah.
Of course, languished in the AHL all year long, and now he's up with the big club, thriving. How much can we derive from this, Frank? Because you played in that 2015-16 season for the Leafs. You got a great opportunity when the games didn't have that much meaning. When you look at games like this for guys like Grew and Quillen and Cowan, and Matthias Michelli would be yet another example. Like, how much can we really take away from these games, in your opinion?
Well, I think for the individual, you could take away that it means a lot for Bo Grew. Like, it means a lot for Matthias Michelli and Easton Cowan that, you know, these guys are fighting for their NHL futures in different ways. Like for Bo Grew, he wants to be an everyday guy. For Easton Cowan, you know, what is your ceiling at the NHL level? And the more reps, the more experience you get, the better off you should be in the long term. You know, so I think the bigger question you have to ask yourself with these guys that are, you know, coming up and playing well is that from an organizational standpoint, why did you not think that these guys could help you earlier on? Like, why do guys sign with this organization and they get a lot of money to play in the minors, but that's it. You never hear from them again. It's like Bo Grew is Alex Steeves, and, you know, is Adam Gaudette, who scored 20 goals with the Senators last year. And, like, you go through the list of these guys that have kind of been stuck in the organization. You know, I'll give you another example. Michael Pezzetta, he spent the last 4 years in the NHL. And, you know, they've been wanting to play this, like, heavy, robust, forecheck, in-your-face, willing to fight. Like, that was his job in the NHL the last 4 seasons. You didn't think at some point in November or December or January, like, these guys could have helped you when we were watching terrible, stale, slow, clunky hockey? So, like, I think what you learn from an organizational standpoint is that there's youth and there's energy that can help you. So why not go to it sooner? And for these other guys, they are hungry. They're hungry to make a name for themselves. They're hungry for another contract, and they want to be NHLers. And, you know, in the case of Easton Cowan, he wants to be a really good NHLer. So I think that's what you learn about those guys.
Frankie, there's a lot of talk about the way this league does not protect its stars. And this is a conversation that goes back to, you can go back a long time in history, Mario Lemieux calling the NHL a garage league and on down the list. And here it is again because of the 5-game suspension handed out to Ratko Gudas. And there's some talk that there should be some reform. And yet I always come back to, you've been a member of the NHLPA, Frankie, and you know as well as anybody that there were 2 players involved in this transaction. Gudas sticking out the knee and Matthews taking the brunt of it. And the NHLPA in those hearings represents them both, right? And represents them both with the same vigor. Star player is not treated any differently than the guy who took out the star player. And for that reason, I'm not sure how you change things. How do you see it?
So that, like, you bring up a good point in the sense that, like, we always talk about it from the sense of discipline. Player X got hit in a bad way, so player Y needs to be suspended a long time. The same group represents both those guys. So financially, the guy who made the hit, everyone within that group has to come to an agreement that we want tougher suspensions and we are going to be willing to deal with the financial losses that come with that. So all of a sudden now, a 4-game suspension is really a 6 or a 7, and I'm out $100,000 more on my salary. And everyone has to be okay with that. And if they are, if the PA is okay with that, they can go to the NHL and say, we are lobbying for tougher suspensions. But then the other side of it is the NHL and the GMs, they're going to have to sit there and say, okay, well, now we have to be okay with our maybe not star players, but our players being suspended longer and being out of the lineup longer. And so both those sides need to kind of come together and say, we want to change the standard, and here's what we're willing to do. I guess until you have that kind of initiative, we are where we are, where GMs don't necessarily want their regular players out of the lineup when they commit infractions. And if push came to shove and you ask me, like, you know, do I want more of a financial penalty because I'm going to be suspended longer? Because you're on both sides of it. The PA is on both sides of it. The players who get suspended and the players who get hurt. So what's the priority as a group? And like, that feels like a complex situation for all those parties to agree and say, okay, here's where we're moving.
Well, you heard the commentary from Judd Moldaver, who's Matthews' agent, also McDavid's agent. And you hear McDavid come out and talk about the possibility of reviewing what they should do with player safety. Clearly, that'll be a big topic of conversation.
Well, that's a big deal, AK.
Yeah.
I remember playing in the league and being a guy who was not known, like, you know, you're just a guy, right? And within our conversations, we would always say, like, if Jonathan Taves or Sidney Crosby or Patrick Kane, if those guys speak up, then it means something, and then you can get stuff done. But if it's just, you know, if it's just regular guys speaking up about things, no one's going to listen. The fact that Connor McDavid is speaking up about suspensions, and I think he did it in the right way, then that will get people's attention, and maybe that's how a conversation starts to happen. But that's the right voice that needs to start that dialogue.
Well, it's amazing. You think about the Edmonton Oilers as a whole. Draisaitl, Chris Knobloch comes out in the last half an hour or so, says he's going to miss some time. The playoffs right around the corner. All of a sudden, the Oilers have a new goaltender. Tristan Jarry is no longer their starter. They're rolling with Ingram, and rightfully so. And Feshchuk and I were debating during the break, Frank, worst trade, the Brandon Carlo trade to Toronto or the Tristan Jarry trade to Edmonton? Who would more so like a mulligan on those deals between Tree Living and Stan Bowman?
Ooh. Well, I think the fact that you have Connor Ingram there kind of it mitigates the after effects of the Jarry trade. Like, seeing what Fraser Minton just scored the shootout winner for Boston the other day. Like, he's a really good player. At times he's been one of their top 2 centers at points this season. Like, and a first round pick. And Toronto's a bad team this year, and is only top 5 protected. Like, that is the worst trade at the time. You know, we can go back and do the revisionist history. Like, a lot of people in this market were happy that there was a right shot D that was rangy, that could play with Morgan Riley, and Toronto had pushed their chips all in to try and win a Stanley Cup. But the crazy thing about the Edmonton one is they stuck by Stuart Skinner for so long. And then at the start of the season, they said they had changed the goalie coach and that was going to help out. And then they finally made the trade. But after all that time, they made the trade for a maybe. Like, if Tristan Jarry plays well, we should have a better goalie here. Why wait that long to make a trade for an if? Why not eventually do it for a sure thing, or as close to a sure thing as you could possibly find? And so you were patient until you weren't, and now you're dealing with a goalie that makes too much money for what he is and is not going to be part of your solution. It doesn't seem like anyways, unless things really turn around, but it has not gone well for him there.
Frank, we've had that debate about should the Leafs, maybe engineer a tank here, right? Can you say, hey, Stolarz and Wall, you've had health problems all year. Take the rest of the year off. We're going to bring up Akhtiamov and Hildeby and have them start. Matthew Nyes, you've been having a niggle all year. You tried to go back to Scottsdale during the Olympic break. No, take the rest of the year off. You could sort of find a way to bring up a lot more Marlies and engineer that tank. Are you in favor of kind of getting that out of the way now, like try and do well in the lottery, get that asset in hand, or do you not feel? I've heard people say, it doesn't really matter because if the Bruins don't get the pick this year, they're going to get it next year unprotected anyhow. So just play and keep going and don't make it a priority. How would you do it if you were Brad Treliving and you had the opportunity to maybe do a personnel engineering assignment here?
Man, just imagine this for a second, though, Dave. Like, you try your best to build a team that you think can win and compete. And, the season starts, and now, 6 months later, you have to try and convince yourself that you have to reverse engineer it and go the other way. Like, it's a tough line of thinking. I don't care who you are or how bad your season has gone. It's tough to pivot to that. My experience having been on a team that finished in last place and eventually got the first overall pick is it kind of just happened organically to a certain degree, right? Like we had a bunch of players that got traded at the deadline, and then we had guys that had nicks and bruises and aches and pains, and they all got shut down. Hey, you have a little bit of a strain, gone. You took a puck off the foot, you have a bone bruise, you're done. And, we played with a skeleton roster. They rewarded a lot of the veteran guys that were with the Marlies. Keep in mind, like that year, there was Kapanen and Nylander and Hyman. And there were some veteran guys on that Marlies team that really did a good job of, not going to say babysitting them, but, cultivating a culture there. So those guys all got rewarded with bonus NHL games. And so, you had all these players kind of shuffling back and forth, and it led to some losses. And eventually the organization got Auston Matthews. How do you do that this season? I mean, you're not going to be brazen about it. You can't. But if an opportunity arises to shut someone down, or you could phrase it as, we're just going to give guys looks in the minors because this is where we're at. If it leads to losses, it leads to losses. But, if you could, I think in a perfect world, if you believe the pieces are there to be a better team next season, they should be, you could find a way to put yourself in position to keep the pick this year and then maybe hand over an unprotected 19th overall pick next year. I don't know if you think you can turn it around that quickly, but if you can't engineer a good team, how much harder is it to reverse engineer this situation? That's tough to pull off. You're almost trying to thread the needle.
Frank, terrific stuff. Love the T-shirt. Our boy Sudarshan is going to join us on their side. Should I invite him to men's night at Carrying Place? Maybe you'll be able to pick up the tab for him. What do you think?
I think you should. Ask him. We'll get him out in the summer. And hey, the meal afterwards is pretty good.
Veal chops, baby. Can't wait. If it only maybe turn to positive temperatures here in Toronto, we might be able to tee it up soon. Thank you, Frank.
Okay, boys. Have a good one.
You too. That is Frank Corrado, TSN hockey analyst, joining us on the Maple Toyota hotline. Red Tag days are here with the all-electric Toyota BZ. Goes from 0 to 100 in just 5.1 seconds. Charges from 10 to 80% in just 30 minutes. Dropped by Maple Toyota today. That is high-quality efficiency right there. And, you know what? It's a very fascinating time for the Leafs. And I don't see them pulling the chute, going full tank mode yet. But if they were to, it all starts in goal. You
Yeah.
cannot be running Woll and Stolars out there, as Frankie intimated at the beginning of that segment, because those guys are going to win games. If you have Akhtiamov in there, who's a kid, very little professional experience, then you have a chance to really suck down the stretch. But Woll and Stolars are going to pick up too many points for you. We just saw it over the weekend.
And guess what? You just signed the guy, Akhtiamov, to a 3-year deal.
Bring him up. Let's see what the kid's
he's
got.
He's got one NHL game on his resume. He needs more. There is no better time than right now to give them to him.
I couldn't agree more. Matthew Nyes, you're good, buddy.
Yeah.
You're good. Yeah, and this is the prudent decision organizationally for the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's almost indisputable as far as I'm concerned.
And we just talked, like Jake McCabe, you're in your 30s. You've led the NHL in block shots. Take the rest of the year off, bro.
I do wonder, though, and we saw it in the NBA, Utah just sitting everybody. This was like 2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
The NBA levying a rather significant fine, I guess all things considered, to the Utah Jazz. And who was the other team also? Was about Indiana? Indiana. So, I don't know. Is Gary Bettman going to be like, well, you're shutting down all your players. We're going to fine you? Well, exactly. And, like, who cares? You're MLSE. It is absolutely within your best interests to lose hockey games, the final 14 games this season. But they're still running all these guys out there, even without Matthews, and their record without Matthews is absurd. It's
Wow.
like 47, 24, and 10, something crazy.
Like, first of all, the NBA's tanking punishments are a joke. I mean, they should the team that should have been fined for tanking is the Washington Generals.
No kidding.
Wizards, not so wizardly, who allowed the 83-point game and who, in a game against the Raptors, pulled their starters late in the game and didn't even bother trying to win.
Washington has Trae Young and Anthony Davis on the sideline. Exactly.
Barely
No,
played.
it's a joke. It's a joke. Well, we'll see if the Leafs maybe take a page from the Washington Wizards. We have Sudarian Yellamara joining us on the other side. Let me tell you, Dave, when Doogie sent the text to the group chat that Sudarian was joining the show, there was a lot of excitement. This guy finished T5 at the Players yesterday. He calls into OverDrive next.
LGT World Men's Curling Championship begins March 27th on TSN.
Now, back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Take my breath away and make it last forever.
Hour 2 continues. You're watching and listening to Overdrive, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you more ways to play your game your way. Korolnik Festchuk in for Brian, Jamie, and Jeff today. And what a week it was at the Players' Championship down at TPC Sawgrass. Should give some love to our boy Luca Policelli, who won the giveaway down at TPC Sawgrass, the TSN 1050 giveaway. Made a hole-in-one at Dyes Valley, the golf course close by to TPC Sawgrass, in the midst of the incredible experience down at the golf course. What a weekend for Luca, and big thanks to the PGA Tour for setting that up.
I did not hear that he made a hole-in-one.
Oh, yes, he did on the
really?
Sunday. Yes, yesterday. So,
Are you kidding me?
Pretty good weekend inside the ropes, and the PGA Tour hooked it up for him. It was truly something special. And the same applies to our next guest, because we saw the arrival of one of the bright young stars in Canadian golf, Sudarian Yellamara, top 5 finish, $925,000 payday from India to Winnipeg to Mississauga, a winding road that leads him here to Overdrive tonight. Sudarian, thank you so much for doing this. Congratulations on your success. How you feeling?
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, it feels good. That's kind of a night to kind of reflect on the past weekend I had. And, it was a really awesome week for sure. Obviously playing in the Players, a big tournament, playing on TPC Sawgrass, a great golf course, and then to top it off with a great weekend from finding to kind of make the cut and having a chance to kind of come down the stretch and get in some sort of contention was pretty cool.
Well, man, I can speak for myself, and I know Dave feels the same way. We were cheering for you. I was so fired up. Every birdie you made, you're getting closer to the top of the leaderboard. And there was a moment there on Sunday when Oberg was just blasting balls into the water. You were at 10 under, and I thought, oh, my God, is Sudarian about to make a run here? Unfortunately not, but you did finish T5, $925,000 payday. Any thoughts as to maybe what you might spend that? Any splurges you've been thinking about, or is it just business as usual for you?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a big payday, but I'll be honest, the main thing is the points that I got. It's a good chunk of points, which is huge for at the end of the season, and at least right now, to try to get into the bigger events, the signature events, and et cetera, and then obviously the big jump in the world ranking. So the money is money, but I think that the main thing is the points in the world ranking jump is huge.
So, Sudarian, we know your story a little bit. The broadcast brought up the fact that you're a self-taught guy, that you mostly use YouTube videos as your main swing coach, so to speak. What is that? A lot's been made of that. Is that, when you think about that, how unusual have you found yourself to be among your peers, and how much do you get asked about that?
I wouldn't say I get asked about it a lot, and to be honest, I don't feel like it's unusual, because at the end of the day, you're just going and playing golf, and golf is a sport where there's not really one way of playing the game. At the end of the day, you just got to get the ball into the hole in the fewest number of shots possible. And I mean, we've seen so many different players play the game and different styles of the game. So yeah, I mean, there's no one way of doing it, and you just got to play the best golf you can.
Sudarian Yellamara is our guest here in hour 2 of Overdrive. So you're out there yesterday. McIlroy's right there, a couple groups ahead of you. Scotty Scheffler's a couple groups behind you. I mean, it must have just been a crazy environment for you. And I know you've played in some professional tournaments before, but those crowds, that atmosphere in the mix at the Players, I mean, what was that experience like? Because it must have been something that you really haven't experienced before.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, to be honest, I played in the Phoenix Open, so that was pretty crazy. But I think it was in a different reason, because it was just the whole thing of the 16th hole and all that, and it was kind of more the entertainment of just being there. So they're kind of watching the golf a little bit, but they're trying to have fun. But this week it was kind of, when I had the stretch of birdies in the third round. Actually, Scotty was playing in front of me, so he had a lot of people following, and I guess maybe when I started making a few birdies, they kind of fell back and started watching me a bit. So that was that. And then, yesterday I played with JJ Spawn. So again, he won the US Open last year, so he has fans that were kind of watching him too. And then I guess with me playing well, they just started kind of piling up and starting watching me. So it was pretty cool for sure. I mean, the fans are supporting me throughout the 2 rounds, keeping me motivated, trying to keep my energy up. And yeah, it was a pretty cool week. And like I said, playing with all the great players around me and all that was pretty cool.
So, Sudarshan, I understand you've withdrawn from the tournament this week, the Valspar. Can you talk about that? And I guess, what's the biggest change in your life when you're suddenly on the leaderboard among all those great names and everybody's talking about you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first off, obviously it's not an easy decision because I know as a rookie you play everything, and obviously I played well last week and stuff like that. But I think I kind of looked at it as a point of view. I've already played 3 straight weeks up to now, and then I have another 3 straight weeks coming up. So if I play 6 straight, it can be a lot. And by the time you get to that 5th and 6th week, or even next week, it's going to be a long week, and especially with the week I had. So, like I said, I didn't want to. I obviously wanted to play as many as I can, but, I kind of looked at it, okay, give my chance to kind of have some rest and then get ready for the 2. And then, it's a long season ahead. So when I get the chance, I should kind of take advantage of that. And I live in Jacksonville as well. So, it was a pretty easy decision to say, okay, I'm just going to spend another week at home. And then, yeah, about being on the leaderboard, to be honest, I wasn't really thinking about it too much. I think you obviously have the leaderboards out there and you see it, but you get used to it when you're playing tournaments. Okay, you play well, you're going to be up there. But, I was just trying to play one shot at a time, play the best of golf I could. I never really thought I had a chance of winning. It almost did happen, but, I had to do something pretty miraculous. So, yeah, all that experience was pretty cool.
You mentioned you're spending a lot of time out in Jacksonville. When you're back in the greater Toronto area, where are you playing most of your golf?
Right now it's just at the TPC. That's kind of the easiest place to go because, I'm not, like I said, I don't really get to spend much time at home because you're so busy with the season, and then obviously you can't golf up in Toronto right now. So the only time, if I do, would be starting, I don't know, April, May, or in the summer months. But even then, you're still playing week after week almost. So yeah, that would be the place I go to right now.
Well, you're going to have a big gallery at TPC Toronto at Osprey Valley come June for the RBC Canadian Open. We can't wait to see you there. You'll be one of the top contenders, and we're really fired up for that tournament. Very fired up for your success. So again, congratulations. Enjoy the week off, and we'll see you in June.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me.
It is our pleasure. That is Sudarian Yellamara. And what a week. $925,000 going toe-to-toe with guys like JJ Spawn, Scheffler's there, McIlroy's there. That must have been some experience. And again, he seemed very calm and poised and composed, and that's what you need to be when you're playing for those type of stakes on the PGA Tour.
Oh, without a doubt. But, you have to be so happy for a guy like this because it's so tough to make that jump, right? Like, that's the toughest jump in pro sports to my mind because it's one thing to be doing well on the PGA Tour Americas or the Korn Ferry Tour, the 2 rungs below the PGA Tour, but you don't really make a living, much of a living on those 2 tours, right? You're kind of just scraping by. This is the first time you can actually make, the kind of money that will actually sustain you for a period where you don't have to stress over, the little things that most pro golfers on that lower rungs have to stress about. And now to get that big check, that takes a lot of stress out of the system.
Yeah, and obviously the points and the elevated world ranking is huge. And again, I mentioned earlier in the show how your article on Sudarian was the first thing I read when I was Googling him during the tournament. I'm seeing him pop up on all these highlights. Birdie, Canadian guy. The guy, the story's incredible, right? And you could tell it better than I, but born in India, moves to Winnipeg, learns how to play golf in the Golf Dome in Winnipeg, then moves to Mississauga, and I mean, everything's just been on the ascent from there. It's an unbelievable story.
Yeah, I mean, won the Ontario Amateur at 16, which is a pretty young age to win it. I mean, it's a man's tournament, right? It's not a junior tournament, and he was a junior at the time. And then he makes the really unusual decision where, you know, so many of the Canadian pros of this generation, the Corey Connors and Adam Hadwins and, you know, Nick Taylors and Mackenzie Hughes, they were all college guys, right? They spent 4 years at a U.S. college honing their game, playing amateur golf. He said, you know what? I don't want to do that. I'm going to become a pro as a teenager. Turned pro right out of high school. I mean, some guys do it, but, you know, it's not the regular route, right? So the thing I like about Sudarshan, he's not interested in the regular route. He's interested in the route that makes sense to him, which is why he hasn't done what everybody else does and hired a swing coach and done what everybody else does and went to college. He's kind of carved his own path, and it's working for him.
No doubt. I don't know if I would have withdrawn personally. I know he lives in the Jacksonville area. While you're hot, keep it rolling, man.
Yeah.
Keep it rolling. But again, he knows what he's doing. Again, the guy just finished T5 at the Players. I don't think he needs any advice from me. We should let you know the OverDrive PGA Picks brought to you by TaylorMade. It is time to find your new fast with QI4D drivers. TaylorMade's fastest, most fittable drivers. Learn more at taylormadegolf.ca/QI4D. Congratulations to Brian Hayes, who did select Cameron Young in the tournament. That's a big winner there for Brian.
Good pick.
I mean, I thought Matthew Fitzpatrick had a good shot at winning, but that drive, that prodigious drive from Cameron Young on 18, the longest ever drive on 18 in the shot link era, I believe is what it is, 375 yards, an absolute missile. And again, there's a world, Dave, in which Cameron Young is the RBC Canadian Open winner. If he doesn't blast that 3-wood over the green by 30 yards on 18 at TBC Toronto, if he makes an eagle, even if he makes a birdie, I believe he would have been in the playoff with Ryan Fox and Sam Burns.
We thought he couldn't miss. We thought he was he's in the playoff for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And, of course, we know how that all played out. And Ryan Fox hit that iconic shot on, the fourth playoff hole against Sam Burns. Man, I'm so excited for that tournament. One of the most fun weeks of the year up at TBC Toronto. Not that far away. Seems like it when you're outside these days, but
I'll tell you what, man,
it'll be here before we know it.
That Cam Young drive is legendary. Did you hear what he said after? He said, "I'm just gonna hit the best shot of my life."
Well, I mean, the guy is completely emotionless.
Yeah.
If I just won $5 million in the Players, I might smile. He did not smile.
You know what?
A single time. I almost respect it.
You know, look at
this. It's up on TSN4. Zero smile, buddy. You just cashed 475. Maybe smile.
I guess when you got
there's a slight smile.
You've got 50 or 60 million in the bank. The money doesn't mean that much anymore. But there is something to it. Like, that guy runs really cool. You know, Oberg blew the tournament, and saw his press conference.
How did he screw that up?
But he wasn't particularly bothered by it. Like, he wasn't freaking out. He wasn't breaking clubs and crying. He was basically saying, hit a couple bad shots, couple bad 7-woods, got away from me. And Sudarshan, a pretty cool customer, right? Like,
for sure.
He's not getting too emotional out there, which I think is look, you can do it a lot of different ways. As Sudarshan said, some guys play it a lot more emotional and run with the highs and the lows of the game and channel it to their benefit or sometimes to their detriment. But there is something about these guys that run real low and low temperature dudes. And there's something to be said for it in those really, kind of cauldrony moments. Because that was a pretty fiery atmosphere yesterday with the USA chants that certainly seemed to get to Matt Fitzpatrick a little bit as an Englishman.
Fitzy's had a nice year. He's a guy who could make some noise at Augusta National in a couple of weeks, I think, for sure. Oberg, too. I mean, I know he's at the top of the FanDuel odds. Yeah, remember. Yeah, absolutely. He and Homa a couple of years ago were right there vying for that tournament, and it's going to be great. The Masters, you going this year, Dave?
I'm planning to go, and won't it be interesting if the guy that we just assumed was going to be at the top of the leaderboard, Scotty Scheffler, continues to sort of look a little bit human.
Oh, very human.
Yeah.
Again, Scotty Scheffler's game is not nearly what it was last year. Irons have been way, way worse. Last year, his iron play was vastly superior to anyone else. Now it's above average. But the proximity to the hole, Scotty Scheffler's not the same player. He's clearly the favorite to win the Masters. But I don't know. I think it's wide open. I cannot wait. That's the best week of the year.
It's hard to beat.
Best week of the year.
It's pretty hard.
If you're a fan of golf. I'll have my FanDuel best bets to wrap things up. I'm Aaron Korolnik. That is Dave Feschuk. You're watching and listening to OverDrive on TSN4, TSN 1050, and TSN's YouTube channel.
Back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Hour 2 winding down here on Overdrive. Korolnik, Festchuk in for the usual trio of Hayes, McLennan, and O'Neill. It is time now for today's best bets, powered by FanDuel. Make your picks. Assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. We're on the Rangers tonight. Artemi Panarin back in town with the LA Kings. The Rangers have been playing some good hockey. That top line with Gabe Perreault and Lafreniere and Zibanejad's looks really good, and JT Miller back in there. The Rangers continue their solid play. Pittsburgh plus a goal and a half. Malkin back in the lineup for Pittsburgh. They're getting Brazo back as well. I like that play, and I like the Detroit Red Wings as well, hosting the Calgary Flames. Today's best bets, powered by FanDuel. Same-game parlays around the NHL are available on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Please play responsibly. 18 plus, physically located in Ontario. One thing we haven't mentioned today, big win for the Raps yesterday against Detroit, which was a great game. And again, the Raptors are a team. It's been the same story all year long. They can't beat the top teams in the NBA. Detroit absolutely is one of the top teams in the NBA, and Jakob Poeltl was unreal for the Raptors. If they could find a way to get him to play a more consistent brand of basketball with what we've been accustomed to over the years, that could make a very big difference when competing against some of those top teams in the league.
That's been the conundrum of the year, right? Like, they're two different teams. The team with the healthy-ish, well-performing Jakob Poeltl is so much better than the team without him that it's not even close, right? Like, it's like that's been the indictment on the management team, that they haven't been able to find a suitable kind of reasonable facsimile to stand in for Poeltl, even though you're not going to find another Poeltl. But you're right. Like, that's a great sign. Like, if he looked pretty healthy against the Pistons. If he can stay that way, which has been the challenge, obviously, suddenly they're a different team. And so many of the losses have been without him in the lineup because they get out bulked, they get out muscled, and sometimes they get outsmarted because he's the brains of the operation on a lot of possessions.
Well, I think Toronto sports fans, Dave, need a palate cleanser of sorts from the Toronto Maple Leafs, because 14 games to go in that regular season for the Leafs, which are essentially meaningless. Sure, they could win out. 28 points gets them in the playoffs, but I don't think that's in the cards for the Leafs. So it's essentially playing out the string. But you got the Raptors who are going to be in the playoffs, maybe the play-in, but they'll be in the mix, certainly to vie for something. And the Toronto Blue Jays next Friday, the home opener on March 27th, amid some rather subpar weather here in the greater Toronto area. So Leaf fans can shift their focus to teams maybe with a more promising present, perhaps promising futures as well in the near future.
Well, it'd be fun to see a playoff run, right? If you're the Raptors. I mean, now it looks like it might be more of a play-in chance.
It's going to be close. Run. It's probably, a 50-50 shot either way?
Seems that way, right? And look, I mean, you never know, right? Like, it feels like that's what it's felt like to me all year, is that there's so many unproven teams in the East. Like who Detroit's at the top, but
well, again, Boston gets Tatum back. The Knicks are good. Philly, you never know with the health status. But again, I think a lot of people point to Boston and New York as the teams that have been there before to some extent. And Detroit's that wild card. Right. A really young team that has played unbelievable all regular season, but are they going to be able to grind these playoff games the way that they've done regular season games?
And last year we saw Cleveland burned up the regular season and absolutely flopped in the playoffs, because there is something to that whole, sometimes you gotta understand that the playoffs are different, and there's a learning curve there, and it's not always instant success in the regular season adds up to instant success in the playoffs, as the Maple Leafs can tell you.
Very much so. Italy, Venezuela tonight in the World Baseball Classic, and the winner will advance to play the Americans. I think we're all cheering for the winner of Italy and Venezuela. Although I will say, you look at the Italian roster, it's essentially just American.
It's American.
It's an American team with vowels at the end of their last name.
Yes.
Like Aaron Nola is pitching. He's Italian, but he just couldn't make Team USA. Right. So that's why he's playing for Team Italy. But I'm rooting for him. It's a very quirky story. Again, they've got the espressos in the dugouts, and they've really embraced the Italian culture. But Venezuela is going to be a tough test for them. So we'll see how that game goes tonight, and certainly that game tomorrow night featuring the Americans and the winner of Italy, Venezuela, will be must-see TV. So that's something I'm looking forward to as well. It's been an unbelievable tournament to this point for the WBC. They have to be thrilled with how it's played out.
Yeah, it would have been nice if Canada had a little bit of a better showing against the U.S. But, hey, man, if we would have had Freddie Freeman, And Vladdy, who's Canadian.
Yeah, we'll take Vladdy. Vladdy's like the William Nylander Canadian.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, he was born in Calgary. You know, we'll take him. But
he's from here.
Vladdy is a Canadian,
I guess
technically.
he wants to spend time in the Dominican. It's his choice. But imagine if we got Freddie Freeman and Vladdy for LA 2028 AK.
Vladdy,
How do you like that plan?
Come on over to our side.
That'd be
We'll
all right.
see if we could woo him. It's been a blast spending the last 2 hours with you, Dave. Thank you very much. Thanks to Doogie and JP, everybody behind the scenes. I'm Aaron Korolnik. Brian, back tomorrow with you, right, Dave?
I'll be here.
All right, so that's at 4 p.m. Until then, ciao.